Welcome to the Hengwrt viewing area in the National Library of Wales and our exhibition on the 4 books, the bringing together of 4 of the most important Welsh language early manuscripts together for the first time. The National Library of Wales is proud of its manuscript collections, and 2 of the treasures, the Black Book of Carmarthen and the Book of Taliesin, have been here since the beginning of the library's history. Now, for the first time, they are joined by 2 other icons, the Book of Aneirin from Cardiff Libraries and the Red Book of Hergest from Jesus College, Oxford, the first ever bringing together of these 4 treasures. The nucleus of this exhibition are the 4 manuscripts that were highlighted first of all by William Forbes Skene, a Scotsman during the 19th century, who was primarily interested in the early history of Scotland, or the south of Scotland during that period, and the evidence that could be gleaned by the study of texts in the Black Book, the Book of Taliesin, the Book of Aneirin and the Red Book of Hergest, which formed the basis of his 4 ancient books of Wales containing the Cymric poems attributed to the bards of the 6th century, published in 1868. We begin our story, therefore, with William Forbes Skene and his 4 ancient books. The Black Book of Carmarthen, one of the most important of early Welsh manuscripts, is here at the National Library of Wales. It is the earliest full collection of Welsh poetry, dating from the mid-13th century, written by a monk, probably somewhere in south-west Wales. The manuscript contains a diversity of early Welsh literature, religious poetry, poetry addressing secular patrons, and also some poems relating to the Arthurian legend in its earliest guise, particularly poetry relating to the figure of Merlin. Not the figure portrayed in later Arthurian legend, but the Merlin who becomes mad after a battle in the Old North, in the area that we know today as the south of Scotland, and who addresses a tree and then a pig as a form of prophecy relating to the future of his people. The manuscript is open to show the poem where Myrddin addresses a little pig. The Book of Taliesin is slightly later in date than the Black Book of Carmarthen, at least 50 years, and we are now beyond the age of the princes in the beginning of the 14th century. It contains poetry that were at various times during the medieval period ascribed to this central figure of Taliesin, a poet originally from the 6th century who develops during the medieval period into a semi-legendary character to whom a lot of poetry is ascribed. It is claimed that within the Book of Taliesin are 12 poems that are the original compositions of the 6th century Taliesin, a poet who lived in the Old North, that area in the north of England and in southern Scotland, and who was the court poet of Urien and his son Owain ab Urien, the rulers of a territory in the north of England called Rheged. The manuscript is open to show a poem relating to the Battle of Argoed Llwyfain in the Old North, in which Urien and his son Owain are victorious against the English, who are, of course, moving westwards at this time and swallowing territory that used to be ruled by the Brythonic kingdoms. In the Book of Aneirin, which is owned, of course, by Cardiff Council and loaned for this particular exhibition, we have another manuscript from the age of the princes from the mid-13th century. In this case, incidentally, probably written in North Wales. The other manuscripts tend to be written in the south of Wales, and we're back in the north in this case. Now, the Book of Aneirin, it is claimed, contains a series of poems written by a 6th century poet called Aneirin, who is commemorating a great battle in Catterick, in what is today Yorkshire, between the forces gathered by a chieftain from what is today Edinburgh, who are trying to repel the English at a strategic point that is a meeting point of old Roman roads. A strategic point. There is a great battle between the Brythonic warriors and the English warriors, and alas and alack, the Brythonic warriors, commemorated by Aneirin in a series of poems, lose the battle and are nearly all killed. These stanzas have somehow in the oral tradition been kept and developed throughout the centuries, and recorded by two monks working in probably the area of Gwynedd around the 13th century, who are, for a particular reason or reasons, commemorating now on parchment what would have been transferred orally from generation to generation. The manuscript is open to show a series of elegies to one or two of these heroes who had feasted on mead for 1 year at the court of Mynyddoch Mwynfawr, the chieftain up in Edinburgh, before sacrificing their lives in battle at Caertraeth. The later dating of the four ancient books is, of course, the Red Book of Hergest, the largest in size of the manuscripts in this particular case. It was written at the end of the 14th century and contains virtually a library of Welsh literature up to that date. Although it has some exceptions. You can't see the poems of the Book of Taliesin or the Book of Aneirin in this manuscript. There are no religious texts or legal texts on its pages, and you'll see no sign of the Cywyddau of the 14th century here. But those aside, you see here the four branches of the Mabinogi, Arthurian legends in Welsh, medical tracts, poems associated with the legend of Llywarch Hen, and also the court poetry of the 13th century. Somebody has worked on a compendium of Welsh literature that is a one library in itself. Who wrote it? Well, one of those who wrote the manuscript was Hywel Vychan. We know that with comparison with other manuscripts. Who did he write it for? Well, we know that it was probably commissioned for Hapgyn ap Thomas ab Einion of Ynys Forgan near Swansea, a rich patron who wanted top quality manuscript where he could obtain access to the earliest Welsh literature. It is a great manuscript in terms of size and in terms of the importance of its contents. It has been at the Library of Jesus College, Oxford, since 1701, where it has been preserved very carefully and where scholars and Welshmen have always had access to the manuscript, and it is now carefully retained at the Bodleian Library in Oxford. And we're grateful for the loan of this manuscript, which brings together the four ancient books of Wales. The nucleus of this exhibition are the four ancient books highlighted by Skene in the 19th century, but you will notice that there are other treasures in this room. When Skene wrote his volume, the importance of the White Book of Rhydderch had not been recognised. That manuscript is here in two parts. The Hendra Gadredd manuscript was yet to be discovered. It was discovered in a wardrobe near Porthmadog at the beginning of the 20th century. That forms its place here in the exhibition. The Boston manuscript was still at the other side of the Atlantic. That was only recently bought by the National Library and is now to be seen for the first time in its new guise in this exhibition. Perhaps you can think of other treasures that reflect the earliest literature of Wales that could be included in this exhibition. I'm sure if we could think of some more, we could fill this exhibition space many times over.